Good evening. It is 5 o'clock and we are calling the work session to order. And I'm going to use a microphone. Welcome, everybody. Thank you very much for being here. This is a special meeting of the Kent School District Board, which is held in public to comply with the Open Public Meetings Act. The purpose of this work session is a presentation and discussion for the 24-25 budget work session, which is the number 2 of 4 sessions. I'm going to go ahead and roll call board members and say this. And I will say your name and then let me know if you are here. Director Song is excused and absent and excused unless he has joined us by phone. He is not at this time. Director Cook?
Here.
Director Clark?
Present.
Vice President Farah?
Present.
And then myself. Again, this is budget work session number 2 of 4. And I'm going to call upon Superintendent Vela to lead us off.
Thank you, President Margell. Welcome to all. Today, I'd like to use up all of our time today for the work session and turn it right over to Mr. Rarick, our Associate Superintendent of Finance. Mr. Rarick.
Thank you, Superintendent Vela. Is this picking up good?
Yes.
Okay. Well, it's my pleasure to be coming before you today for budget work session number 2. I'm going to introduce my co-presenters here in just a second, but can we do some time management budgeting here? We budget everything, including time. So a lot of these work sessions are a lot of slides because there's a lot of information that we need to disclose to you. Doesn't mean that we have to speak ad nauseum on each slide. So, part of this is where do we want to focus our time? And I would say that a couple slides to be aware of are slide 13 is one we're going to want to pause and discuss, and slide 29 is one we're going to want to pause and discuss, and also as there may be some discussion about the capital levy, that's one of the last slides. So keep that in mind as we're working through some of the informational slides. If you take as much time as you want with each slide, but you're also going to want to budget for board discussion, which I know is what you really want to do, right?
Yeah.
So,
do you have a preference if we to ask questions for when you ask for them?
My preference, I serve at the pleasure of the board, but my
course.
preference is if you would hold those questions, we can take them at the conclusion of those sections because sometimes the next slide answers the question that might be percolating in your mind. So that would be my preference, if that's okay with the chair.
I would think that that's great because it would keep us from asking questions that are going to be answered anyway. So thank you very much.
And I'm just trying to be sensitive to the fact that there are 29 slides and we're not trying to overwhelm you with PowerPoint slides. A lot of these are provided for your and the public's information, but not necessarily every one of them is a discuss slide.
Yep.
So with that in mind, I actually have 2 co-presenters this evening. To my left is Ms. Lisa Tyler, our Director of Budget. She's presented before you before, as well as Jamie Frazier, the Director of HR Operations, both of whom I think have 4 or 5 slides to intersperse throughout. So if there aren't any questions, I'll get right into it. Okay. So for many of the board members that have been through the budget cycle several times, you're familiar with the cadence of work session 1, work session 2. You get a little deeper into the current fiscal year, and we can provide updates as to current spending as well as projections about next year. And then finally work session number 3, where the full budget proposal takes shape, and there's a work session there in June before you leave for the summer prior to coming back in August and adopting. Let me start you off with, there we go. One of the things I wanted to highlight is the journey we've been on as a district, and for some people who have engaged with the district budget more recently but don't necessarily have the historical context. One thing is that we have seen and been planning for what we're confronting now for almost 3 years. It's been very clear in our minds, and this slide is literally a cut and paste from the April 2022 work session. And if you recall, I'm not going to read these out loud, but these bullets almost to a T are exactly where we are at, including the last slide, which says 2024, last bullet, 2024 and beyond presents unique challenges in long-range budgeting for all the reasons that we are seeing right now. The pivot in our capital levy situation, or the capital budget situation, the pivot in ESSER funding, These were all foreseen, all have been planned for, and now we are in the implementation stage of that. We're going to tackle 5 subjects at different levels of depth. We're going to talk about current year updates. We're going to talk about the additional information we have about forecasted revenue. We'll talk a little bit about staffing, the capital levy update, and then talk about next steps. This is just for your reference. I think I would probably highlight June 26th and August 21st. I think August 21st is now kind of gelled as being the tentative late August Wednesday slated for budget adoption. That typically happens in either the 3rd or 4th week of August. So just be aware of that and have it marked on your calendar. Okay. And we're going to talk a little bit about enrollment. So a slide familiar to you. Here's what I want to point out. If you're seeing this on your paper or on the screen, a little bit of good news here. Check out that blue bar, which represents our current year, and see how the blue is closing in on the mustard yellow color. You see how we were sort of dropping in December and January, and the gap was widening from last year? We're closing that gap. These are not huge changes, but it's great that that gap didn't continue to widen. And so who knows, by May or June we may see that gap close entirely, and that would be good. Okay. This shows in the 4 categories of enrollment the history of our where we have been, which you've seen before. The final bar graph represents projected enrollment, and what this basically shows is that our projected enrollment for next year is very, very close to what our actuals are now. So this is not either a radically larger or smaller proposal from what the reality is that we're experiencing right now. We've added 3 slides here that are important because when we think of enrollment, we typically think of, okay, how many headcount students do we have in the school district? There are other types of enrollment that are important to the budgetary situation of the district. And one of them is, what is the caseload that we're experiencing in some of our categorical programs? So your enrollment could be dropping, but your number of MLE students, for example, the number of students of your rural population that need those language supports could be increasing. Could also be true in our special ed, or as we call it in this district, inclusive ed program. So let's start with MLE. The first 3 columns show you the final counts in our MLE program in the 21, 22, and 23 school years, and then the intervening bar shows you the counts in the current year, and then the final bar to the far right shows what we are budgeting next year. Our counts, whether we're talking about transitional bilingual students in elementary or in secondary, are growing. They continue to grow. They have been growing since the 2021 school year. That brings with it more revenue from the state, but it also brings with it required staffing through our contractual agreements with our labor partners. So it's a revenue increase and also an expenditure increase as we meet the needs of these students. Similarly, in inclusive education, similar sort of a phenomenon. So again, we've been reporting to you enrollment's declining, right? Well, true statement. But the percentage of our students who have specific needs that we need to meet in these categorical programs in some cases is increasing. So similarly, you can see whether we're talking about Tier 1 or Tier 2 students as classified by OSPI, those counts continue to grow since 2021. And finally, here are our free and reduced lunch eligibility counts, which is what drives the funding for our learning assistance program. LAP, as you may have, it is typically referred to. Going back to 2018, we were below 50%. We are now above 56%. And we have 26 of our buildings that are eligible for LAP high poverty status. Okay? And here's, I think, a good news slide, which is that the board may remember that we made a big move this year in engaging the community eligibility provision, the CEP program, where we got to the point under the leadership of our child nutrition director, Teresa Fields, who's not able to join us, but she deserves a lot of credit for figuring this out, how to get as many buildings as possible, not quite all of them, but as many as possible in this program. And what you see here is a comparison of, we're seeing quite large increases in the number of kiddos that are being served in our child nutrition program. A 38% increase in the number of breakfasts served across the district and a 22% increase in the number of lunches served. This is first quarter of this year compared to first quarter of last year.
And those are breakfast and those are lunches?
Correct, yeah, left-hand side is breakfast. I think it is labeled, but it's kind of small.
Yeah, it is.
It was just labeled under the yellow, so I was just trying to make sure that I was making.
Yeah,
sure.
left
Okay.
is breakfast.
Oh, there we go, okay.
Yeah, I see what you mean. Yeah, breakfast should be sort of centered between those two bars there. But that's a good news slide because it means that our engagement in CEP has had the intended effects
Yeah.
for our kids. Okay, now we're going to talk a little bit about current year update, and I will be leaning on my colleague, Ms. Tyler, to speak to some of these slides. But some high-level highlights before we get into the details. So I think the last time we talked to you about current year was in the fall. And since the fall, we've had a number of things break in our direction, to the positive of us, very few against us. So that's good news contextualized. We still have a very significant budget deficit that we're working on, but I'm just giving you a flavor for, as we've moved through the year, that deficit has not been growing quite as quickly as we thought it would be in the fall. So that's good news. A couple of reasons why. Some of those caseload increases that we talked about in the previous slides, those bring with them additional revenue. We have this year, to the credit of the IE team, the most robust special education safety net application we've ever had in the Kansas School District, which is not a sure thing, but typically we do well in those applications, suggesting that we're going to get quite a bit more in safety net aid from the state. As you saw in the previous slide, that enrollment decline that we were seeing relative to last year sort of evened out and started to close back. And we had some legislative remedies, but not only they weren't huge remedies, but what they did do, which is highly unusual, but to our benefit, is they enacted them this year. So typically they will meet in a supplemental session for funding next year. This year they enacted them in this session and enacted them for this year and next year. So that gave us some current year help. That's not to suggest we don't have a large structural deficit we're working on. We still are replacing $31.5 million of funding, but it does move the dial a little bit for us. And I think Lisa's going to talk a little bit about some current year spending updates.
Yes, so good afternoon, President Margell, members of the board, Superintendent Vela, staff. Yes, so the slide you're viewing right now is really focused on current year budget status as compared to last year. So the information is how are we doing March to March. So what you can see here is our year to, I feel like I've lost my, there we go. We are up overall by 6.2% from last year through this point of the year. If you just look at salary and benefits, that's up 5.2%. And sorry, overall we're 11.3% in non-compensation related expenditures. Sorry, I keep losing my mic. If we look at where we think we're going to end the year, we expect us to be about less than 5% or around 5% different or over where we were at the end of last year. So over an increase in spending year to year, last year to this year. And
In terms of compensation?
total.
Okay.
Total expenditures. So if we're sitting here at the end of the year, we're projecting us to have an increase of 5% or actually slightly a little bit less at this point compared to last year. Now, you might have some questions on how are we projecting and what are we using to project that. I'm going to speak to that in a future slide, so if you could bear with me and I will speak to that.
Okay. So I thought this would be a helpful slide for the board members. I hope it isn't too complicated. There's a lot going on in here, but let me simplify it visually for you. Okay. So the lime green line is labeled as the 2023-24 current school year fund balance by month, right? So just, I know there's a magenta and a blue, put those out of your mind for a second. Just concentrate on that solid lime green line, okay? Now, what we did here to make it sort of crystal clear the effects of ESSER next year is we are simulating what the fund balance would be this year if we did not have ESSER claims. And that is reflected in the dotted neon green line. So looking at February, for example, the February solid green line shows a fund balance of 65.7, looks like, right? What is the corresponding dotted green line?
February is going to be 32.
32.9.
Yeah.
That's right. So we didn't do anything other than,
Just
if there was no ESSER claims this year, and no other change, there were no ESSER claims, what would the fund balance be right now? Okay? So you can see, obviously, I mean, you just take 65 minus 32, it's about,
33.
yeah, because it's 32.9, but you're in the 32 to 33, that's how much we've claimed in ESSER money, right? So this is the extent of the impact, and I think it puts it in real stark terms, so you can kind of, you know, understand it just as you would understand a household budget. Your savings account might be $1,000, but what if you didn't have, right? Okay. Any questions about that before we move to the next slide?
Okay, so here we go. I believe this is a slide that you have seen before or are familiar with, I believe, or at least the concept of what we're showing here. So this is what we're trying to depict what our structural deficit is going to be as we move into not only the 24-25 budget year, but also, you know, 2 or 3 years beyond that. So what the bars on the far right show is we are currently, again, projecting our ending fund balance to be about in the mid-50s, and that would result in expenditures of about $517 million with revenues of $511 million. And so there, just that alone, you can see, if you just do the math, we're $6 million structurally, you know, deficient in, you know, revenues to expenditures. And then if you add on top of that, the loss of the ESSER revenues going into next year and beyond, there's our 31 point, if I can see that, almost $32 million, okay? So that, the combined of those two numbers, the 6 plus the 32, that really is what we're considering our structural deficit that we need to address. Now here's where I want to give a little information on how do we, you know, how are we projecting the 517 versus the 511? You know, there's a model that we use to depict, you know, based on, you know, behavioral spending patterns, historical spend compared to budget. It's always based on assumptions. At the beginning of every year, I typically develop 3 projection models. One is based strictly on budget. So if we were to collect every dollar that we budgeted for, and if we spend every dollar, I have a model that shows basically what our monthly spend trend would be. That's not going to happen, so that's not a real valuable tool. But then I start using actuals, and so from September on, you know, it's updated with actuals for the first month and then projected, and then as you get further into the year, it becomes more and more based on actuals and less on projections. We're over halfway through the year now, so it's pretty well, you know, we're getting, that number's becoming more and more firm. Things that can affect that are always based on assumptions. So as we, you know, get more information or, you know, learn more from the legislature, for example, like the proactive payments for some of those things of the legislature. We certainly didn't know that in September, so we have factored that into the projection model. Anyway, long story short, you know, that is how, you know, it's a very defined process on how we monitor our projection from, you know, throughout the year, from September all the way through. And again, we're more than halfway through the year, so we're getting more and more comfortable with the fact that we're going to end the year with a fund balance of about, you know, mid-50s. Right now it's sitting at about 57 million. And it's true that we budgeted our fund balance to be 50 to 51 million. Again, you know, there's factors that have come into play that we didn't know about when we built the budget last year. So going from a budgeted 51 to, you know, again, mid-50s, that explains the difference in that.
So we're going to get into revenue projections, and the first slide is sorry, the first slide is not informational. Go ahead. This is the-
Okay. So this is just a basic pie chart of, we always really, a starting point of budget development, well, it starts with enrollment projections, which then leads directly into revenue projections. And we are almost finalizing our revenue projections for next year. So this is a pretty good snapshot of what you're going to see when you adopt our revenues for next year. And you can see, again, it's just a chart on how much the various sources of revenue contribute to our overall budget. And I'm going to speak to the different split of that in a couple of slides here when we speak more directly to specifically state revenue. So go ahead.
This is informational and just highlights the fact that our approved EP&L will produce about a 2% increase of that revenue source. And I think this is the one
Okay,
Lisa
so
was
this is
referring
the
to.
slide where this is only depicting, this only refers to state apportionment revenue, so only our state programs. State revenues are, again, fairly easy to estimate, project, predict, whatever term you want to use, because the factors that are used to develop those are enrollment. Well, essentially, the state provides a model to project those, and the data that goes into that model are enrollment, various caseload enrollments that Ben spoke to earlier, which you might have a K-12 enrollment of this, but your specific caseload enrollments could vary from year to year, which would affect some of these specific state allocations. Legislation also could change state revenues from year to year. I just want to speak a little bit. So if you look at, let's skip over the first set of bars. I think it's pretty self-explanatory, but at each of these sets of bars are pertaining to a specific revenue or a state apportionment program. So the first set of bars is basic ed, the second is special ed, LAP, et cetera. So let's look at IE, the second group. And one more thing I would like to note is the first three bars of each group, those are actual amounts. The fourth bar is projected for this year, and then the far blue bar, that is our projected for fiscal year 25. And so you see, in the case of special ed, it looks like we're expecting a fairly significant increase in fiscal year 25. Same can be said maybe for basic ed, and for the other programs, they seem a little more flat. But special ed, so first of all, it's driven by caseload, of course. So our special ed caseload enrollment is up 13.2%. The revenues that you see there, that difference is 23.8. But if you have a caseload increase of 13.2, again, you combine that with legislative increases and COLAs and whatnot, that can explain why we're seeing such a, I would say, significant increase in the funding. A similar comments can be made for bilingual or MLE. Again, our caseload enrollments are up 17.7%. It doesn't show such a dramatic increase on the chart because we're talking about smaller amounts, but that revenue is up 11.5%. On the case of basic ed, that has to do with, our enrollment is essentially flat, so enrollment doesn't have so much to do with the increase, but changes in the prototypical funding formula, COLAs, things like that would explain the increase in basic ed.
What's the other?
Other is, other programs.
It just looked like it was a really big increase year over year percentage-wise.
Other state grants, really that's it. Other state grants other than your LAP, other than your major grants.
Yeah, and the corrected other is not in here. So the big increase you're saying, that's a typo. So we have a new version that, so we'll get that to you.
Okay, thank you.
Jamie, sorry, Ms. Fraser is going to speak to the next, I think 5 slides?
I think so. Okay, how's that? Okay, all right, we're going to dive into our staffing allocations and key considerations that we had for building our staffing models for this upcoming year. The focus of this is specifically certificated KEA staffing. I didn't include any other staffing considerations in here. I just wanted to focus on our certificated staffing, since that is our biggest staffing that we run through. So this first slide that's up here just goes over what we're going to talk about as far as the key considerations to include. We've adjusted our staffing ratios that we use to populate the basic ed classroom staffing model, and the next slide will speak to that a little bit more. And we're going to talk about CTE, increased allocations at secondary level, the sunsetting of our ESSER funding, and how we're recapturing those positions that we've allocated. The utilizing a one-year categorical budgetary funds that we can allocate for staffing, and then just high-level adjustment to central office certificated positions as well. We'll go over that as well. Perfect. Okay, so this first slide represents, like I said, basic ed classroom FTE. So those, it's not full building FTE for our certificated staff. It's just allocated for how we run our classroom model. So as I spoke to, the ratios we used this year, we increased for K-3 middle school and high school. Our 4 through 6 ratios stayed the same. And what that means essentially is we used a 1:25 instead of a 1:24 this year for K-3. And that, using projection, populates out an allocation. And for 4 through 6, we left that ratio at 1:28. Middle school, we moved from 1:25 up to 1:26. And high school, we used 1:29, up from 1:27. And so again, it's using our projected enrollment and populating through. So that's not class size, essentially. It just populates our projected FTE, and then we review building by building, class by class for elementary, and then full scope for secondary as far as our basic ed classroom FTE. So the model, as it populated out, had a reduction of 76.1 FTE. Again, that's just basic ed classroom. And it doesn't include our categorical funding positions, title, LAP, MLE, SPED. It doesn't include a library, our specialists, our CTE positions either. Those are separate allocations. And so it's just this next section. Oops, actually, sorry, Ben.
My bad.
This next section just
Trigger happy.
that breaks it down by levels. So elementary, middle school, high school, academy. And so I just want to highlight on here that these are FTE reductions, not staff reductions. So this process will work through the involuntary transfer process, which is what we're going through right now, and through attrition, which is also what we're receiving as those come in. We receive typically at least around 60 FTE in attrition, or 60 separations, I guess I would say, for attrition a year. So working through those pieces, that's how we redistribute our staff throughout the district. All right, thank you. Okay, so highlighting on those other items at the building level that are not basic ed classroom. This year, we added 4.0 FTE for LAP-funded credit recovery positions at the high school, 1 FTE at each high school. And this is really replacing our ESSER-funded 1.0 FTE at each high school credit recovery positions. So it's a swap out, if you will, with the ESSER-funded positions. So those are staying, just funded differently. We've added 1.0 FTE for LAP-funded instructional coaches, 0.5 at 2 of our middle schools. And that really is the 2 middle schools that don't have title and LAP high poverty funding to draw from. So it helps them utilize more support staff in the building. And then looking at CTE, we've added 14.1 FTE for CTE at the secondary level. And that is, let me give you a breakdown by middle school. That's 3.2 FTE, 9.7 at the high schools, and 1.6 at KLA. And that really is to help utilize additional CTE staffing, if you will, which helps support the reductions in our basic ed FTE. Helps offset that a little bit. And then as we spoke to earlier, or Mr. Rarick spoke to earlier, we're sunsetting our ESSER funding, right? And so that means the positions that are funded by ESSER this year are also sunsetting. So we're recapturing our success coaches that we have staffed out at our buildings, and we have a 1.0 success coach at each of our buildings for the district. Okay, and this next slide captures some key staffing decisions at the central office level. So we have added 17.0 FTE instructional coach positions, 1.0 each for position. So there's 17 instructional coaches. This is utilizing Title I carryover funding. So this is one-year funding that we're able to continue on the support that we're not able to continue with our success coaches. These positions will be itinerant in nature, so they'll be able to go out and support our title buildings. And then in addition, we have 5.0 FTE added for instructional coach positions out of our Title III funding. I believe that's carryover as well, which will support a multilingual education. And that's throughout the district, and again, itinerant in nature. And then we've made some adjustments to our central office certificated staffing as well, just to support the realignment of the district office. So this last slide pretty much captures most of the FTE that we discussed in the previous slides. So it also includes, IE staffing on there as well. Looks like it's projected to reduce 11.0 FTE for IE, and overall net reduction 95 FTE. Again, that is being recaptured through attrition, as well as working through our ability to transfer teachers around the district. We may not be able to get a full scope settled, transfer everybody, but we do also have another opportunity at the beginning of the year through our fall IVT, just to readjust as we would every year for staffing.
And if I could add to that, ideally, if you're impacted by the orange, perhaps you get placed by the blue. That make sense? So because we are creating positions with our categorical rollover dollars, and because we are not in a RIF situation with our labor partner, every teacher that stays with us will have a job, right? So it becomes a question of how they are placed in this environment, right? And this is in a sense theoretical, because if attrition is lower than that, or if not all, there's a lot of different scenarios that could play out under these initial assumptions. Yes, sir.
All right, so I have a concern.
Can you use the microphone, please?
I have a concern about the elementary curriculum being phased in and the need for support for those people as they're dealing with a real structural change. So when I see, success coaches, whatever, and I don't see the numbers match, I'm concerned.
Yeah, if I may. So one of the pieces, I thank you for the question, the concern. The piece that I wanted to share to the board, that the categorical dollars like LAP, they're actually restricted to support for those students that need it. Okay, a little different than ESSER. ESSER is a little flexible, so that was the first thing. The other piece is that schools do receive additional categorical support on top of what you're seeing through allowable funding sources for Title I and LAP, aside from high poverty. So there's quite a bit of support. In addition to that, I think what you were getting at is, with the new adoption, is the support it takes to implement the new curriculum. And that is part of our plan in terms of professional development, et cetera. And that's been going on for just a bit, if Dr. Kim wants to add anything to that. But I wanted to share that about the funding piece. There are other supports in the schools for students. So Dr. Kim.
Am I on?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you for the question. When we think about the onboarding of 17 instructional coaches, it definitely brings a challenge, but it also leverages an opportunity. And so the work that Dr. Christine Corbley and Cynthia Green, our executive directors who oversee our curriculum instruction, they have already been working with our program specialists and our leaders in curriculum instruction, and will ensure that those instructional coaches will be in cohesion with the implementation and the best practices that we have invested in this school year. So they will not be working in isolation. There will be accountability to ensure that they are part of our teaching and learning culture and understand what those best practices and professional development are. So that is some visionary work that our team still has to do, but that alignment to continue that momentum that we have been successfully seeing this school year is something that we are committed to.
And I'm still going to ask the question, is there statistical evidence that demonstrates that we're not falling behind as this process goes forward?
So I'll take a stab at that. Dr. Kim can add to it that we're continually monitoring our student achievement data to help inform that. And so that's part of the answer. The other one is we have been using it since the pandemic. I think that's what you're getting at, and to determine so what has the gap been and how are we monitoring that based on how students are doing.
Well, okay, but there's the trap here. You've got schools in different stages of the implementation of that curriculum. And now you're changing the support structure. And what I'm asking for is, as we go forward next year, the collection of evidence to make the comparison for the different approaches.
Got it. I'll turn that over to Dr. Kim.
So if you're asking what the success criteria will be to see if that model is working with this, this one-time carryover plan, we will continue to look at metrics like iReady as our ongoing diagnostic. The benefit is that we've been using that diagnostic year over year, so we're going to be able to see that we're using the same assessment to see what did fall 22-23 look like in comparison to 23-24 proficiency, and we have some gains and celebrations there. Then looking at 24-25 school year, that is some evidence that we can look forward to just progress monitor and see how things are going. If next school year in the fall, we notice that there is a significant decline, then we as a team need to take a look and look at, is there a specific domain of reading? Is there some implementation that we're seeing that's not as consistent? And then what kind of professional development or supports do we need to make sure in place? Ideally, we would then use those instructional coaches to say, hey, we noticed that there was some regression from fall to fall in these schools. Let's make sure that those instructional coaches are doing some really targeted strategies to support what needs to take place. So the instructional coaches that we will work with and those Title I schools, we will provide those targeted supports in the best way possible, knowing that they're not in the building, but try to continue the momentum by working with the school leaders to say, what worked with your success coach to implement CKLA this year, and what can we learn from that so that we can sustain that as much as possible with more part-time coaching support.
Thank you.
Okay, just a brief capital levy update. Now this slide was populated at noon and now we have slightly different results. I think it's up to 41.4. Just a quick note to say that there's so many people in this room that worked so hard on that campaign. Some of them I'm looking over in the audience and it's not the result that we were hoping for, but that doesn't deny the fact that there was some real earnest hard work that went into this. So these are the results that we see right now, and obviously it begs some questions in terms of the future. I don't know that this is necessarily the time or the place for that discussion, but it will have an impact on our budget going forward, perhaps not so profoundly in 24-25 as 25-26 and 26-27. And then concluding thoughts are that obviously we are in a period of budget transitions in multiple funds. And the first thing is that we want to keep students at the center of our work, which is why I'm glad that we just had the discussion we had, because that's a student-centered conversation, and that's what the budget is it is resources dedicated to supporting our strategic goals, and those center around the teaching and learning of students. But just as the first slide highlighted the fact that a full 2.5 years ago, we were having this conversation about a stair-step approach, here we are. And what that means is that this is not the final step, that we see this as a multi-year solution. So you need to kind of prepare yourself intellectually for that we adopt a budget, that will incorporate some reductions, and that will not be the end of it. And that, like the other districts in our region, this is not a one-year phenomenon. This is a multi-year phenomenon. I appreciated Ms. Fraser's description of the fact that because we are not in a RIF situation, tracking attrition and tracking placements and making sure that all of our value teachers have a place with us next year is what we are about in this budget cycle. And so the creative use, as you heard about, of our carryover dollars, whether it be in LAP, whether it be in Title I, to try to replace as many of those positions that are providing the types of coaching to buildings or supports that we can, for as long as we can, is why you see those additions on this slide. It might seem weird that districts adding positions at the same time that there's ones in orange. What that's about. What that is about is the most leveraged creative use of the funds that we can have for as long as we can have them. And in this case, it's every carry forward dollar that we can access in our categorical programs for the 24-25 school year.
Can I ask about that?
Yes.
I'm sorry, just emotional reaction to this is, I hate it, to be honest.
You're
I don't think
you're
any of
not
us.
alone.
I know, right?
I don't think any of us do
No,
love it.
none of us love it. But I see the reductions are hitting, across the board, and who that will primarily be, because it's primary in our district, is our general ed students. And then all the additions that we're having benefit not our general ed students.
Mm-hmm.
What are we doing about our general ed students that are the vast majority of our students?
Mm-hmm. So I think the way I would say to answer that is that that's true to a greater or lesser extent depending upon which program we're talking about. So let's talk about CTE, for example. So in some real creative work this year, I would say, several months, I'm looking at my colleagues on this, we think we have figured out a way to do just what you're talking about, which is use some of these dedicated carry forward dollars to impact general ed students in a positive way. CTE and its relationship to STEM is one where we think we've been able to achieve that. Some of these programs, they're just not designed for that. So Title III, for example, that is specifically for students who need that language support. And the law is extremely strict in our ability. So I guess the point is, with some of these programs, when we have any of that flexibility to positively impact class size, we're trying to do that. And I feel like we're on the precipice of a really significant, meaningful change with the CTE part of that.
But that's only middle school and high school, correct?
That is correct.
So our
That is
elementary
correct.
kids, they're FTE, so they're bigger classes
That's
size.
correct. There's no denying.
this is,
There's no denying, there's fewer staff, right?
Yep.
And there's no denying that. But I'm trying to give you a flavor for the fact that when we have the opportunity to use these categorical dollars to mitigate the effects on classrooms, we're doing just that. Like we're of the exact same mind. The other thing I want to highlight here is that the orange is theoretical. Now, if we show up in the fall next year, and we didn't get the retirements or resignations that would typically, historically have occurred on average, right? Those teachers will be with us. We will place them. And we may not, in fact, see a number of 76.1. We may see something smaller than that. We may not see a number of 40. So just remember that this is all premised on the number of teachers that are with us next year that we have a responsibility to place. And it could look very differently than what you're looking at on this slide. And we've discussed that internally. This could look very differently depending upon what we see in retirements and separations from the district.
And if I could just add to the question that President Margell asked about, what about elementary, right, in terms of general ed, if I recall, that for the full board's understanding that Title I dollars are for Title I schools, the general ed student in that school is a part of a school-wide program, meaning that dollar can be used for all kids, including those who, quote, are not free-reduced or qualify for that. So I wanted the board to understand that piece. The second part of that is, which allows then the general ed dollar to be used for the interventions that include advanced tiers, et cetera. So that was the other piece. The other one is for schools that are not Title I, there are LAP dollars, which are learning assistance programs, can be used for any student. General ed doesn't have to be a free-reduced student that qualifies, that is not meeting standard. So when you think about that, we have students that are in every school that are not meeting standard. Forget the, quote, label or how they get the funding. They are entitled to it because of the school-wide approach that we have and because some of the tiered interventions that we've been sharing with the board over the last couple of years. So I just wanted to share that as an additional source of funding for general students. Dr. Kim.
Okay, so I don't know how much this will help, but I really believe that to do great practices in instruction and around innovation, it doesn't require more dollars. So when we think about interventions and enrichment and multi-tier systems of support, you will always hear educators that know MTSS framework as saying core instruction is always the first priority. So all students, whether or not they qualify for services for gifted and talented, multilingual education, inclusive ed, all students should receive a high quality Tier 1 core instruction. So I just want to name that high quality experience should be given to all students, no matter where their placement is. The other thing I want to name is my excitement and the collaboration that I've been doing with leaders from teaching and learning, from tech services. Kyle, we've been talking about how we deliberately integrate technology into core instruction. So all students will have the experience to have that intentional, innovative experience in their learning. And so I believe that that would address gen ed. Yes, we would love to have the most updated devices, which, through the latest levy, we will not be able to. In its entirety, there still is opportunity to think about how we can take the tools that we have and the software that's available. And then, of course, the work around artificial intelligence. I know that you've been getting updates, and that's just another one little layer of the work around innovation that Mel Benner and her team have been leading. And so I just want to name that when we talk about innovation, we talk about high-quality core instruction, we are talking about all students, and so I hope that gives you some hope that we are always thinking about core instruction for all students and those high-quality experiences.
Questions from the board? Vice President Noel, I'm going to start with, we started at this end last time, we're going to start this time.
Okay. I just wanted to ask a quick question. I've been hearing projections. So that tells me that we don't...
Just keep
Just
talking.
keep talking.
Just keep talking? Doesn't matter. can't hear me. So what I'm trying to say is, and then it comes on now. All right. What I'm trying to say is, yes, I know projections are, things that we do and how we allocate funding and puts. When are we going to be able to know? Because the way I think is, for example, my household budget, I allocate certain amount for miscellaneous, certain amount for my gas, my electric. But then the actual bill might be even less than that or more than that.
That's right, yep.
Right? When do we know that it's exact amount? So therefore, we will be able to say, this is our expenditure and this was our revenue.
Yep. I mean, you know, obviously for a fact when you've closed the year, but, for the types of variables that Ms. Tyler tracks, daily, things really settle in the summer. Once you hit the summer, you pretty much know, because your enrollment's settled by that point. You've pretty much been able to flag down all the big contracts with each office, and are you really going to spend your budget, or are you going to pull, all those sorts of things. Kind of where we're at right now, and where everybody is at by definition, is we've been talking to you a lot about where, trying to go back to the, so this sort of represents conceptually where things could conceivably land at the end of this year. It doesn't speak to where things will be next year.
Exactly,
Okay.
yeah.
So now let's talk about next year and how we've been sort
Thinking
of
about
addressing
it.
that, right? So that really gets. This is sort of the key slide about next year, is that this one of the very important decisions that this district had to make and has made was to not engage in a reduction in force. Okay, that was the decision. I support that decision. So that's not, but that's the decision, right? So what does that mean? What that means is that you are in a place where you don't know how many teachers you will have next year, right? Because what you were saying is contractually, whomever is still with us, and we hope that our teachers stay with us. That is, retention is a good thing, right? But whoever is still with us, we will place by contract. We will honor that, right? So how would you go about projecting that, right? Well, you look at your history, right? We have very variable history in terms of the number of teachers that come and go in our district, right? That's right. So the decision about not going to that, especially at a point where we still have a healthy fund balance, right? The decision to not go to a reduction of force is one where you take it that you are comfortable on some level with a lack of precision about exactly how many people you're going to have in the fall. That's the choice, right? So if there is going to be this intervening period of time where we know just as much as you do about how many teachers are our largest largest entity, right? And Ms. Frazier and I talk now weekly, almost daily, about, so what is it today, Now, to be clear, we want teachers to stay with the Kent School District. That is our ultimate strategic plan goal. But as a factual matter, it's important to keep track of in terms of our budget project prognostications. So summer will be really important in terms of understanding, okay, we can put this on a slide. We can say that this is the plan. It could be half of that. It could be 2/3 of it. It could be 3/4 of it.
But it could be even the other side.
Correct. So when you started with your question about when will we know,
Right.
I'm giving you a flavor for the fact that at least in this first year, that key decision put us in a space where we will never exactly know until we get into the next year. Does that, are you sort of tracking what I'm telling you here about the nature? Because it's our largest cost center, right? Teachers and teaching is our largest cost center.
Right.
And we will employ and place as many teachers as are still with us next year, which is an unknown.
But what I'm trying to see is, so you're saying well into next year or beginning of next
Fall,
year?
I would say, yeah.
Fall. So by summer, we won't have an actual idea of how many teachers we're gonna have,
We'll be pretty close, but, go ahead.
right? Yeah, so, okay,
Ms. Fraser's the next
right,
one.
right.
Yeah, just to back on what Mr. Rorick is saying.
Right.
So, right towards the beginning of the school year, as buildings are like confirming their enrollment and classroom, it goes from that projection
Right, right.
place to actuals. And that's when we really start to do the work of looking at building by building to see, okay, are we balanced in this? Do we need to add an FTE? Are they overstaffed or understaffed? And that's really that fall IVT. So really, I would say by mid-September is probably when we're going to know, other than those programs, i.e. MLE, that MLE continues to test students beyond that time frame. We may need to adjust staffing. That's really when we set our staffing for the year, and we can no longer move teachers around. So that, I would say that around that time frame.
And then to add another element to that, suppose we come back.
We only
and
have 4 minutes, just to put that out there.
Okay, yeah. Well, if
Sorry.
there are other questions?
Yes.
Go ahead, everybody else.
If I can just add
Right, right.
Well,
10 seconds. But just to help clarify, so if you're talking about revenue projections into next year,
Right.
and also, yeah, keep in mind, our budget is almost entirely built on projections at this
Right.
point. Once we see what our actual enrollment is,
Then,
we use October, and then we start, okay, now we know, that's when that fall IVT process comes into play. As far as revenues goes, especially state-driven revenues, in January, the state trues up all of our revenues to actuals based on our final enrollment. Federal revenues, we pretty much know what we're gonna get by the time the budget is finalized. What we don't know, we have to wait for the year to play out so that we know what our carryover/recovery is gonna be, but we have to close the year. But there are certain points that we have, okay, as of this, now we know what we're gonna get. So
Questions
January
from
is a key month for apportionment.
thank you.
questions for the board?
Director Clark.
Actually, I just want to make an announcement because it does impact this group. I am your KCDA rep. It turns out that their single biggest warehouse ship item is copy paper. And of course, school districts typically order that in July, so they have it distributed in August. But they dropped the price this year to attract more customers, and we're told that the prices will have to go up in June. So I would recommend
Duly noted. Duly noted. It's written down.
Director Cook?
Yeah, so the only question I had was, I just did some calculations real quick. The amount that we're dropping percentage-wise for the different schools, so I'm looking at this slide here. And it shows 7.5% roughly for elementary, just about 7% for middle, about 8.5% for high school, but the academies are nearly 15%. What is driving the large difference? Because it's about twice the average of the other three.
I can start that. So when we merged, and tell me if I'm on base, but this is what I believe to be true. When we merged our two academies, Camp Mountain View and I can't even remember what they were called, Phoenix? Yeah, Phoenix. Thank you. To Camp Mountain, we started a gradual reduction as we merged in. So we reduced last year, and the significant drop at the academies is also doing that this year again, just to get down to that program level that we're going to run it at.
Okay, so it's with purpose. It's not part of this
Right.
reason. It just happens to happen at the same time.
So, yep.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
I just had a question about our enrollment staying so flat this year. Does that have to do with we're losing less students, we're gaining more at an equal rate to which we're losing them? Is it what is the numerator or the denominator that's changing?
Do you have a thought about that?
Actually, I think it's still a mystery. We're starting to see the trend line, remember that? You know, it looks like it. I mean, you could go back 100 years and from September to June, your enrollment is gonna, I'm gonna do it backwards. It would look like this almost every year, you know, gain from September to December, and then it starts to decline throughout the spring. You know, during COVID and even a couple years after that, it was kind of all over the board, quite frankly. And I think if you recall that chart where Ben mentioned that our line is, you know, approaching the other line.
Yep.
I mean, that's a good thing because we're not losing as many students as we had in the past. And we're back to sort of a flat environment, which again, that's a good thing because we're not losing. It's still unknown as far as, are the kids going to start coming back?
I have no reason to believe that the numerator, to answer your question, the numerator and the denominator are atypical this year, if that makes sense. Like, I'm not seeing, I haven't heard anything radically off on either of those.
So if I could add just 10 seconds to that, for our board, that if you take last year moving into this school year, the projected enrollment that we had and the actuals that showed up allowed us to actually make a decision on that flat for this coming year. That's not true with other districts. And so back to the trend line, we won't ever know till we get the actuals, but the team's done a great job when you look at the movements that had to be made in IVTs, in actuals, based on the enrollment. They did a really, really good job, and so I just wanted to commend them for that. So thank you, President Margot.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody, for your work on this. Sometimes it is what it is, and it's good to know what it is. Okay, it is 6:01, and we are adjourning this work session. This work session is adjourned for an executive session for approximately 30 minutes. The purpose of this executive session is to discuss the performance of a public employee, potential litigation, and the legal or financial risks of a course of action.
Oh, yeah.
And first order of business is we will do a roll call of the board members. I will state each board member's name, and if they are present, they will say present. Director Song.
Present.
Director Cook.
Present.
Director Clark.
Present.
Vice President Farah.
Present.
And then I am here. Director Song, will you say the pledge or lead us in the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Welcome, everybody. It's good to see so many people in our audience tonight. Thank you for coming and joining us this evening. This is a meeting of the Kent School District Board, which is held in public to comply with the Open Public Meetings Act. We welcome the public's participation in this board meeting and thank those of you who have come to this meeting and those who are viewing our live stream. The process for audience participation. The purpose of a board meeting is for the board to conduct its business in public. During the meeting, the board will listen to but not respond to comments from visitors. Whether made verbally in person, verbally on video, or written, comments are limited to a total of one per person per regular board meeting. One additional comment per person may be submitted for a public hearing topic if there's a public hearing on the agenda. All forms of public comment are subject to Chapter 4256 RCW Public Records Act. The public may comment on regular board meetings in a manner authorized by state law. All comments must adhere to Policy 1420 and Procedure to 1420P. If you wish to make a comment to the board, comment forms are available for completion prior to the meeting and must be turned in no later than the beginning of the legislative report. No forms will be accepted once this report has begun. Comments are limited to 3 minutes. Public comments will be heard after the opening, during the preliminary communications from the audience at a specific agenda item, and during final communication from the audience. Students will be first to speak on any topic. Please state your first and last name prior to beginning your testimony. Abusive public comments personally directed towards the board, staff, or students will not be tolerated. The use of specific names or personally identifiable information of board, staff, or students is not allowed. Board members or KSD staff members may interrupt or terminate an individual statement when not adhering to Procedure 1420P. All comments, whether verbal or written, must adhere to the standards of civility as defined in Policy 1400, Meeting Conduct, Order of Business, and Quorum. If you're seated in an overflow room, come on in, we still got some seats. And there's a brief delay in the live stream audio. We will allow extra time for you to make your way into the boardroom after your name is called. Individuals with items for the board or superintendent must provide the items directly to safety services staff. Approaching the dais during the board meeting is not allowed. Any items turned in will be provided to the board and superintendent following the meeting. Check your box. And our next item, number 1.06, our land acknowledgement. I invite Vice President Farah to read it for us today.
Thank you. We acknowledge we are gathered upon the ancestral lands of the Muckleshoot Indian tribe, who historically lived throughout the area between Cascade Mountains and Puget Sound.
Thank you very much. Moving on to our agenda review. Superintendent Bela, are there any changes to the agenda?
President Margell, there are no changes to the agenda.
Great, thank you very much. And this week, we are at section 2.0, recognition, and I have the pleasure of reading about National Student Leadership Week. Kent School District Proclamation, National Student Leadership Week. Whereas National Student Leadership Week, NSLW, is a theme-based week dedicated to the recognizing and supporting the independent role of student leaders. Since 1972, the National Office of the National Association of Student Councils, National Honor Society, and National Junior Honor Society have sponsored National Student Leadership Week. And whereas student leaders are a positive influence on their peers, modeling good behavior and scholarship in and out of the classroom, and serve as change agents to improve the overall climate and academic performance levels of their school. And whereas the support of school administrators and faculty, parents, and community members is necessary to help student leaders develop these the essential traits and characteristics of a leader, and to provide positive experiences to expand their skills and ensure their successful education of all emerging student leaders. And whereas the National Student Leadership Week serves as an ideal time to recognize student leaders for their hard work, determination, and commitment to making a change in their schools, learning communities, in the world. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Board of Directors of the Kent School District recognizes April 22nd through the 26th, 2024, as National Student Leadership Week in Kent School District and urges all citizens to join in this observance. Signed this 24th day of April 2024 by the Board of Directors of Kent School District and Israel Vela, Secretary to the Board. Our next proclamation will be read to us by Director Clark, Administrative Professionals Week.
Whereas Administrative Professionals Week recognizes the many roles and responsibilities of the administrative professionals in our schools and district offices, and whereas the Kent School Board of Directors acknowledges the critical role of the administrative professionals to supporting the education of our students and ensuring that students are successfully prepared for their futures, and whereas administrative professionals work in the district school buildings, the transportation building, and the central administration campus, and whereas our administrative professionals are often the first impression on the face of the Kent School District to the thousands of parents, community members, and students that walk into the doors of our schools and offices or call on the telephone, and therefore serve as key frontline public relations ambassadors. And whereas the school board recognizes the expertise and dedication of the district's administrative professionals, their work to master technology and effectively utilize communication skills, their vital contributions and commitment to teamwork, and their willingness to learn and accept new challenges and opportunities. And whereas the school board wishes to commend each and every one of our school district administrative professionals for their service to students, staff, parents, and community members each and every day. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Board of Directors of the Kent School District proclaim April 21 through 27, 2024 as Administrative Professionals Week in the Kent School District and urges all citizens to join in this observance.
Thank you very much, Director Clark. And our last proclamation, 2.03, School Lunch Hero Day, is read to us by Director Cook.
Let's see. So, Kent School District Proclamation School Lunch Hero Day. Whereas nutritious meals are an essential part of the school day, and whereas the staff of the Kent School District's Nutrition Services Department are committed to providing healthful, nutritious meals to the district's children, and whereas the men and women who prepare and serve school meals help nurture our children through their interaction and support during meal distribution to students, and whereas the nutrition services staff are professionals who have risen above and beyond by helping to feed all children in our community. And now, therefore, be it resolved that Kent School District expresses its deep appreciation to these valuable employees and commends their good work on behalf of children and proclaims Friday, May 3rd, 2024 as School Lunch Hero Day. Signed this 27th day of April 2024.
Thank you very much. Moving on to section 3.01, public comments. Ms. Antello?
Good evening, President Margell, members of the board, Superintendent Vela, and Ms. Curry. For this meeting, we did not receive any online comments, whether video or written. However, 6 forms have been filled out for comments tonight, and I'll present those at this time.
Any students? Pardon? No students. Thank you. Okay, our first comment will be Ron DeLay. And Ron, give us just a moment to start our timer.
Okay. Are we set?
Thanks, Ron.
Good evening, board members. First of all, I'd like to thank personally Director Andy Song for coming and visiting iGrad a couple of weeks ago. That was terrific, and he had a chance to visit with us, and we had a chance to show him iGrad so he could get a really good idea, I think, of what was going on. What I'd like to share with you tonight is a letter that each of you have received, but I want to read it aloud. It's regarding a second request, formal request, for board executive or work session with iGrad stakeholders. At the last three board member meetings, I spoke to you regarding the district's plan to downsize iGrad Academy by 50%, moving our open doors alternative high school to the little green building on Kent Kangley adjacent to Tops. Several iGrad students and staff members spoke to you regarding this issue as well. At the end of the meeting, which I didn't attend, but I saw the tape later, not using any names. Anyway, there was an administrator from the central office who spoke for some time, beginning with the assurance that he would provide facts in his comments, the assumption being that the well-meaning comments provided earlier to you by supporters of iGrad were lacking a factual basis. Totally untrue. And most disingenuous from someone who had just said how important iGrad was to the district and what a good job we were all doing, despite the fact that he had not invited us once, or any stakeholders, to a single meeting to discuss any of this, and the fact that the superintendent had shared earlier in the meeting that the whole idea started actually a year ago. Yes, we are all passionate about iGrad, with good reason. But we were also factual. While that individual did present some facts, what he failed to do was present those facts with the appropriate context, meaning the realities of the population in a smaller setting, not to mention how significantly compromised iGrad's growth will be by these plans. I challenge you to have a work session or executive session where we can all learn the facts in context and the big picture with the future in mind, because I think that's been woefully ignored in what you've seen so far. I have 25 years of experience on probably all of you here. Maybe not you. But anyway, certainly the individual who spoke last week or 2 weeks ago with the facts, my whole background, we're done?
Unfortunately,
Okay.
that is the end of the
Anyway,
time.
bottom line, you guys, we need to meet. We need to meet you and with the stakeholders, and we need to share the facts in context. Thank you.
And the next person to speak is Janine Weber.
Good evening, Board President Margell, KSD Board of Directors, Superintendent Vela, Ms. Curry. My name is Janine Weber, and I'm a counselor at iGrad Academy. As Mr. DeLay mentioned, several of our students, and several of my colleagues did provide comments at the last meeting to express our concern about moving our school to a much smaller building, and that it would reduce our capacity to serve the district's most at-risk students. While at the same time, the need for re-engagement programs like ours, iGrad, has more than doubled, and the district has no other alternative programs to address the needs of those students. I'm speaking again today to correct some information about this issue that was shared by others later in the evening after I and my colleagues had our opportunity to speak. It was stated several times by others later in the meeting last time that my colleagues and I provided misinformation in our remarks that needed to be corrected, that we were expressing our feelings and, quote, trying to make it out something it's not to be. I want to assure you that I and my colleagues are professional educators who understand and teach on a daily basis how to back up opinions with facts and how to recognize and avoid faulty reasoning, and invalid source data. We expect that from our students, and we expect no less from ourselves. My remarks at the last meeting were carefully researched and factual, as were those of my colleagues. None of us shared any misinformation whatsoever. Each of us spent considerable time gathering information and ensuring that the points we made were accurate. Additionally, 2 of my colleagues researched and compiled comprehensive informational folders, which they provided to all of you, to provide some historical and current data and context to support the points they were making. It was also stated later in the meeting that iGrad's flexible attendance policy is key to meeting the needs of our students, which I believe it is, and that the smaller building plus the portables would not diminish our capacity. However, the belief among our staff is that even with the portables, we will have to reduce the number of students we can serve or schedule students in shifts or other things. We're pondering different alternatives, just getting started on that. But that would reduce or eliminate the flexibility that's so key to our program. So inevitably, some students would be left out in either of those models. So one final point was made by others, that the comprehensive high schools will provide more credit recovery options to better support students in-house. While that's a positive step, credit recovery does not address the lack of alternative programs in our district, how to increase student engagement, or how to address needs of students who come into high school with below high school level skills. So I urge you to, there was a work study session that was agreed upon last time. I urge you to read the information that was provided and to have that session, and we welcome the chance to participate if possible. Thank you.
Ms. Weber. Our next speaker is Dulce Henry.
I so appreciate the effort you put into pronouncing my name. Thank you.
Thank you for the phonetic spelling of it. I appreciate it, too.
I'm a teacher, yep. So good evening, President Margle, Vice President Farah, Director Cook, Director Song, and Representative Clark, and Ms. Curry, Superintendent Vela. So once again, my name is Dulce Henry, and I work at iGrad Academy. I'm here tonight to advocate for iGrad, and I might be a little bit more of the feelings than the facts person in this instant. So as of this month, I have been an educator for 25 years. I have seen some things. Of all the things I've seen, between the internet blowing up like it is, I mean, I was there through the Nisqually earthquake, I was there through the September 11th attacks with preschoolers, no less. 16 and Pregnant became an MTV show that exploded to all of our educators' horror. I mean, I have seen some things, but every day I go to iGrad and I see things that motivate me to show up at work every day. And it's amazing. Our students are very diverse, they have very diverse needs, and I don't want any of them excluded because we're being moved to a building that doesn't have the capacity we have now. Look, I don't love where we're at. I would love some adjustments to where we're at, but I'll be darned if moving us to a smaller building is gonna not cause some problems. If my kids aren't with us, where are they? Are they gonna be on the streets? Are they gonna be dropping out? Excluding them I just don't find that acceptable. So things at iGrad, as far as, like, not a lot of people know about the program, but when I walk in, the kids say please and thank you. They hold the door open for me. We do the fist bumps, we do the side hugs, we catch up on stuff because building relationships is critical between students and teachers. But then we get down to business, and it's biology, it's civics, it's contemporary world history, it's filling out job applications, it's how to properly correspond with teachers for remote classes, Green River Community College. We do amazing things. Our students might be significantly credit deficient, but they are not hope deficient, and they are not potential deficient, and they deserve every opportunity that we can give them. So I just, once again, in regards to the smaller building, in regards to the movement, please come to our school, meet us, see how we do things. We would love to have, we're an open doors program. Our doors are open to you as well. Thank you for your time, and thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you, Ms. Henry. Our next speaker is Jennifer Lyons.
Hi, my name is Jen Lyons. I'm a parent at Glenridge Elementary School, where our fifth graders' overnight outdoor school was canceled and turned into a day trip with less than 24 hours notice. Have you seen the face of a fifth grader when you have to tell them the night before their trip that they won't be going, even when their bags are at the front door? I know you've already heard from a lot of frustrated parents, but I wanted to come here tonight not only on behalf of my family, but of the many parents in our community I've spoken to who can't attend tonight for various reasons, including logistical challenges with work and childcare and language barriers. In an article titled KSD Ignites a Unique Outdoor Education Camp Experience, published on the Kent School District website, a district leader said, quote, "This year is the first time a consistent outdoor experience has been offered to all district fifth grade students." At a board meeting on June 14th of last year, a board member said, quote, "Outdoor education for our kids is so incredibly important. I love that the district has come in and made this equal for all students and made this a priority." They continued to say, "Every fifth grader starting next year is going to be able to go to camp 2 nights, 3 days." It is very clear that this promise has been broken. As of today, 7 of our schools have had their overnight trips downgraded to a day trip. 6 schools are still scheduled to attend, but many have already been warned that they are short on mentors. That leaves only 16 of 29 students whose camps have gone forward as planned, thanks in large part to parents, community members, and one dedicated board member who stepped up to chaperone on short notice. By the way, my email invitation to district leadership asking them to chaperone went unanswered. 16 of 29 schools is 55%, not a passing grade, as we all know. Worst of all, this program was meant to resolve equity issues in our previous 6th grade camp program. But these equity issues persist. At Glenridge, a Title I school like many in our district, a lot of parents simply can't afford to take 3 days off work or arrange an alternate childcare, especially on short notice. This means that the children in our district who could most benefit from the opportunities outdoor school affords are being left behind over and over. Tonight, I urge the board to take a hard look at the many failings of this program if they plan to continue it for next year. To that end, here's a list of questions the public deserves answers to. Number 1, clearly high school mentor recruitment is a significant hurdle. I want to express my appreciation to a district leader for emailing me with the steps that have been taken to try and boost recruitment, though counting on a Hail Mary last-minute mentor training over spring break surely isn't the right solution. What specific changes to the mentor program will be implemented for next year? Question 2, how will communication be improved in next year's program? Question 3, in the contract with Osprey Camp, the district took ownership over securing a full roster of mentors, yet much of the burden fell to busy school principals, teachers, PTA, and parents to fill the gaps. How will you ensure that this burden is removed? Next, much of the funding for this program came from a grant. How will the district show accountability for these funds? And finally, how will the board hold the district accountable for this failure? How can future 5th grade parents trust that this program will run as promised? In closing, I too believe outdoor education is incredibly important. By standing here tonight, I'm demonstrating that commitment. What will you do? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lyons. Our next speaker is Ben Brennan.
Hello, members of the board. Thank you for having me. I would agree. I'd like to echo Jen's comments. I think I put a high value on outdoor education, and I think that's important. I served as a camp counselor in my younger days, and it was a really great experience as a high school senior to participate on that level with the kids, and I think that needs to be a priority. The reason I'm here today is I have emailed all 6 of you individually numerous times over the past 2 years. I've only heard back from 2 of you. And, you know, Wednesday nights at my house, we usually put our 3rd grade student to bed and we watch some TV. And lately it's turned into watching the YouTube channel of the Kent School Board because it's been more entertaining than the Real Housewives. And it's shameful, to be honest. And I think the voters of Kent have spoken yesterday with less than 60% support of the levy, and I am very frustrated with the board, and I think that's why you guys, or why this levy failed, and it's incredibly frustrating. I've been a homeowner for 10 years. I have never not supported a bond or levy. This time was different. This time was absolutely different because I voted for all of you, every single one of you. I can say that with confidence, with the expectation that you would all work together collaboratively, and that clearly is not happening, and it is shameful. You all need to work together. I don't know what this is about with isolating people, keeping people out of meetings, whatever it is, it needs to stop. This needs to be corrected, make this right. I'm not happy, and I think I speak for a lot of voters in Kent.
Our last speaker will be Duncan McManus.
Good evening, board. Duncan McManus. I've got a student in the district, and I'm a resident. Missed on the levy again, third time. So last time I was here, it was all about, we all know what's going on in our communities, and we all don't need to reach out for constituent input. Besides, we were talking about people coming up to them in the parking lot at the grocery store, telling them how much they agreed with and all that stuff. So here we are, like 60%, I mean, not even close. So the third time in a row, and so from this point forward, I would like to begin the conversations with the knowledge that you really don't know what's going on in the community. Third time around means you don't have a finger on the pulse of the Kent community. When last I spoke, I said I hope 1669 was worth it because I don't think either of us knows the true cost of 1669. I think that was a payment, the levy. You want to know how I know that? I know that because KEA has enough members that it could carry the levy if it wanted to. What does it say about you as a board if you can't get a group of educators to vote on an education levy in the district that they work? I don't think we're done with payments either. I'm hearing that enrollment is up, but then I'm hearing reduction in workforce. Now I'm hearing 40 student classes. Do you think that's going to create an environment conducive to learning? And I wonder what happens to kids who can't wade through a 40-person class and have success. I suppose we could just send them to iGrad. Oh, wait, iGrad got turned into a shack. Sorry, kid, I guess you'll have to just have to make do. Do you think that's going to affect our graduation numbers? I will certainly be watching. So, anybody that has ever worked private sector knows when they start asking you to do more with less, the layoffs are coming. So one more time for the back, national teacher shortage. If you push teachers out, they will not come back, and if you do it enough, they won't even apply to this district. If you want to save some money, I'm going to suggest your salaries. That wall, yours, how many teachers can we save? Do you feel like you've earned it this year? Guys, get humble. Your pride and your arrogance will not serve you in this situation. Thank you for your time.
The next speaker is Greta Nelson.
Hello, board. Superintendent Vila. I am Greta Nelson. I have no speech prepared here today, but I am concerned. I've seen evidence of social media posts being deleted from Facebook, the Kent School District page. This is a public institution that has requirements related to the right of the public and First Amendment protection of speech. The deletion of these posts that I had seen that were removed should not have been. They were in response to a sponsored Facebook post by the Kent School District, and comments against the levy were deleted improperly, likely illegally. Your social media policy needs adjustment. Your actions, the person deleting those posts at the direction of somebody higher up is just as responsible for that deletion as the appointed municipal officer that allows the deletion of the post. It's concerning to me that the actions of this district are infringing on the rights, the First Amendment right of the public, and if you have a public forum like a Facebook page, you cannot delete. If you allow comments in support of something, you need to also allow them, negative comments in the same regard. Just the training the other day from your board retreat, Curtis Leonard discussed when you had to be concerned, so that you don't prohibit somebody that's speaking against something if you also allow the positive comments. So I would remind the board of its, and the district of its obligations to the public in regards to First Amendment protection of speech. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that's all of our comments for tonight. We're moving on to section 4.01, Superintendent Report, and I invite Superintendent Vela to read us his report.
Thank you, President Margell. Recently, we partnered with a local community-based organization, Mother Africa, to provide a voter registration workshop along with levy information. I appreciate our local CBOs and their work to support the families in our community. I received this email about the workshop from Risho Sapana, the Executive Director of Mother Africa. Quote, "Thank you all for a very successful educational session. Parents were able to ask questions and gain knowledge about the levy, voter registration, ballot filling, and drop-off sites, as well as general information about schools' accessibility to the community and parent involvement. Thank you for partnering with us on this event. We hope to continue to foster these relationships long-term," end quote. It is through partnerships and building relationships in our community that will complete our strategic goals and continue successfully preparing all students for their futures. On that note, a sincere thank you to those who voted in the April 23rd special election. As the election day has passed, we are now monitoring the daily election updates. My team will provide regular updates and our KSD website. Final election results will be confirmed on May 3rd. We will continue to work collaboratively with all stakeholders to explore the various possibilities and make informed decisions in the best interest of our students. I was privileged to meet with 5th grade students at Meridian Elementary School. Our focus was on goal setting and how goal setting can translate into future success. I asked the students about their goals, and here are some of their replies. I want to be better at reading and math. Better attendance is one of my goals. I want to read thicker books and be smarter than my brother. Goal setting is a dynamic approach to empower students in their educational journey. We, as a district and school board, also set goals to achieve our mission. As our school district continues to implement its strategic plan and goals, we will continue to align resources towards strategies that are most impactful to student growth and success. To that end, I remain committed to fiscal responsibility and financial stability for our students' futures. I believe education is the foundation of our society and offers unlimited opportunities. I can personally attest to the opportunities that achieving an education has provided to me as the son of a migrant working family. As we continue to monitor our financial situation, appropriate steps will be taken to continue aligning resources in the best interests of our students. I want to also take a moment to address some of the concerns regarding iGrad. We began looking for space that would better serve students and staff in the iGrad program due to safety concerns and the lack of the opportunity to maintain a facility aligned with KSD standards for our students, among other things. In alignment with Goal 3, we will always keep the best interests of students at the center of our decision-making. Some things we have heard that students and staff want in a new space are a dedicated lunchroom, a safe outdoor area. With the remodeling of the building purchased for this purpose, these spaces will be provided along with the new fixtures, lighting, and furniture. It will also accommodate additional classroom space, although smaller than the current iGrad facility. Moving forward, we will be scheduling a board work session to provide additional information about iGrad and its new facility. I'm excited to celebrate the 3 and 4 sport athletes from the class of 2024. Not only do these students excel on the field, court, or track, they also excel in the classroom as evidenced by their grade point averages. Grade point averages range from 2.77 to 3.7 amongst our 4 comprehensive high schools: Kent Meridian, Kent Ridge, Kentwood, and Kent Lake High Schools. I'm proud of our student athletes and say thank you to the coaches and families for their efforts to support and encourage each and every athlete in the Kent School District. I'm proud to recognize and celebrate the outstanding staff and volunteers who make a difference every day. April brings many celebrations, including National Occupational Therapy Month, School Library Media Month, Administrative Professionals Week, Public School Volunteers Week, and Paraprofessionals Day. National Occupational Therapy Month is an opportunity to acknowledge the vital role that occupational therapists play in improving the lives of individuals with disabilities. Our occupational therapists are a dedicated team that works tirelessly to provide services, enabling students the opportunity to achieve at their maximum potential. During School Library Media Month, we recognize the contributions of school librarians in promoting literacy, fostering a love for reading, and providing access to educational resources. These dedicated professionals create welcoming spaces that inspire learning and support student success. Administrative Professionals Week is a time to honor the administrative staff who keep organizations running smoothly. I extend my gratitude for their exceptional organizational skills and dedication to excellence. Public School Volunteers Week recognizes the individuals who generously donate their time and skills to support our schools. Whether it's assisting in the classroom, organizing events, or providing mentorship, these volunteers make a significant impact on our students' educational experience. Paraprofessionals Day is dedicated to celebrating the contributions of paraeducators in our schools. Paraeducators provide essential support to students, helping them succeed academically, socially, and emotionally. I'm proud to serve alongside these exceptional staff and volunteers who exemplify excellence, compassion, and dedication in their respective fields. As we stay strong to the end of this school year, I encourage everyone to continue working together, building bridges, every student, every voice, every day, to prepare the students in our community for successful lives beyond the classroom. Thank you, and that concludes my report.
Thank you very much, Superintendent Vela. We now move to our legislative update, and also this is the last moment that we can turn in any public comment cards. Okay, giving a moment there. Great. Section 5.01. Director Clark, would you like to give our legislative update?
So it'll be very short. Obviously, they're no longer taking reviews of the proposals for the next session. However, a reminder, May 30th, a Thursday at 6 o'clock, the regional meeting for the South King County District WASDA schools will take place. And it's an opportunity for them and us to share what's happening on the ground in our buildings. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Director Clark. Moving on to section 6.0, the consent agenda. Is there any items that anybody would like to pull for discussion?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
6.14.
6.14?
I'd like to pull 6.15 as well as, let's see, which one, 6.02.
Just to confirm, I heard that 6.02 and 6.15?
That's correct.
Great. Any others?
All right, Madam
Very much.
Chair, I'd move that we adopt the consent calendar minus 602, 614, and 615. So it would be everything between those, between 601 and 616.
Second.
The motion has been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, we move to a vote. All those in favor for adopting the consent agenda 6.01 through 6.16 minus items number 6.02, 6.14, and 6.15. All those in favor, please raise your right hand and say aye.
Aye.
The motion passes 5-0. Is there a motion on the floor?
I move to approve 6.02, Construction Administration Services for Network Data Cabling Improvement Project, Phase 1, Award of Contract.
Second.
The motion's been moved and seconded. We're open for discussion.
Would it be possible for the president to bring up one of the people working on this specifically?
What was your question?
I had a question on the data cabling improvement project and how it is impacted by the levy that seems like it's likely not to pass at this point.
Superintendent Vela, would you like to?
So thank you. I'd like to invite Dr. Behringer to come up and maybe get more clarification, and we'll bring up somebody that can answer that question.
President Margell, members of the board, Superintendent Vela, Ms. Curry. Yeah, I'd like to invite our Director of Technology to the podium, Kyle Olson, and to answer your Director Cook's question.
Thank you.
President Margell, esteemed members of the board, Superintendent Vela, and Ms. Curry, pleasure to talk to you about the district-wide cabling project and the levy and what the outcome would be if the levy doesn't pass, right? So we have existing funds in the existing levy, so we were starting the process, and so I think we're fine right now with the district-wide cabling for the secondary schools. We have to probably take a close look at the elementary schools, the rest of the district, and really make the determination, the money that we have, that we really need to hold on to and do the best with what we do have and all the project that we want to do. Do we want to continue forward with a secondary or with the elementary cabling job? And so we'll have to look at that and really see if that's worthwhile. Some of the things that we'll look at will be E-rate funds, right? So when we're getting 80% of it paid for by the federal government, and we're only spending 20% of it with our own funds, we can make a case that that probably still would be the best interest of the district. But those Category 2 funds are not unlimited, and there's certain dollar amounts that run over a 5-year cycle. So some of the strategy could be that we break up the cabling job into smaller sections, and we don't do it all next year for elementary. We break it up into subsequent years so that we maximize our funds. So this current project that we're talking about right now, I think we're good on. We need to move forward. We have a signed contract, and we're just waiting for the E-rate funding commitment decision letter to go into effect. I think we need to just really strategize on the next phases of the project.
I see. So with this one, this does apply to the E-rate funding. Is that due to the fact that it's network data cabling, and so it's infrastructure-based as opposed to services-based or something like that?
Yeah, so this right here is the construction administration of the contractor, BCE, that helped design it. So this is helping them to administrate the contract with the vendor that is already under award. And you're right, E-rate is all about delivering internet connectivity and bandwidth either to the school building or within the school building. So this is a Category 2 within the school building. And so those dollars are limited, but we're working within those limits. So yeah, this is an E-rate eligible funded project.
See, that's great. I'm saddened by what's happening with the levy. Possibly, hopefully things will turn around. But I'm glad that we're able to continue doing the work that we need to do to at least get the network to a state that can be used going forward. And that we're using E-rate funding, which obviously, 80% being paid for by the federal government as opposed to our school district ourselves is fantastic. So I'm glad that we're still able to do that, and I'm glad that it's being brought to us to do that today.
Thank you for the question. Super proud of the team that worked on this.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you for the question, Director Cook. Thank you.
Any additional questions? Seeing none, the motion has been made and seconded. We're moving to a vote. All those in favor of approving item number 6.02, Construction Administration Services for Network Data Cabling Improvement Project Phase 1, Award of Contract, please raise your right hand and say aye.
Aye.
The motion passes 5-0. Is our motion on the floor?
Madam Chair, I move to approve 6.14 gifts, donations, and memorials acceptance.
Second.
We are now open for discussion on item 6.14.
I just want to acknowledge the people that are really putting in time and money to support our schools. Panther Lake Elementary got a equipment donation for $1,470 from the Church of Christ for school supplies. Fairwood Elementary got from Fairwood Parent Teacher Association for the 4th and 5th grader needs, they raised $776. For 3rd grade supplies, $830. And for 1st grade Museum of Flight field trip, they raised $960. At Northwood Middle School for social and emotional learning, the Northwood Parent Teacher Association gave $2,500. For Cedar Heights Middle School for student learning resources, Delta Kappa Gamma donated $1,000. And by the way, Delta Kappa Gamma is a women's sorority for female teachers and school employees that want to continue to support the actions of what they have already given their professional life. Matson Middle School got a replacement dishwasher from the Matson PTSA for $650. Ridgewood Elementary for their 5th grade field trip, the Ridgewood PTA raised $900. Kent School Technology Support Services for Advanced Classroom Technologies got an 86-inch non-touch display with balance for equipment, a donation of $2,300. And Kentridge High School for Fast Pitch fundraising, were able to get purchase equipment to the tune of $825. And we thank all of them.
Thank you very much. Any additional comments? Seeing none, we'll move item 6.14, gifts, donations, and memorials acceptance to a vote. All those in favor, please raise your right hand and say aye.
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 The motion passes 5-0. Do we have another motion?
Yes, I move to approve item number 6.15, vouchers.
Second.
The motion has been made and seconded. We are now open for discussion.
So in reviewing our vouchers here, I wanted to point out that we've spent quite a bit of money on legal fees. The first question I have is, I've asked this before, but haven't had an answer, and I don't know if we've had a chance to get this information, but how much have we spent so far on legal fees that are related to the specific issues with 1669? I know I'm not speaking about 1669 in general. I just want to know if that information has been brought back to us yet. President Margell.
So just seeking clarity.
Yes.
Your question about this item, is that under the general fund voucher, the capital fund, any one of those specifically?
Yeah, so if I go up, let's see, it's probably, I'm not sure what, they aren't numbered, but it's the ones that are charged by Foster Garvey. There's two different ones with a total check amount of $10,244. Is all of that money applied to that specific issue, or were there other things that also were included in that?
Thank you for the clarity. So it's a voucher related to the general fund to that item?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I will ask, not sure if we can get you that answer today, but I'll ask Mr. Ben Rarick to come up and share if that can be done or if something needs to be followed up with. So, okay. Mr. Rarick.
Just as a clarifying portion to my question, there's also charges from Pacifica Law Group. That seemed to be the other law agency that came and worked with that, and so if we can get those as well.
For the record, clarification of the question for Pacifica as well,
yes,
related to the voucher.
Yeah, and any other, if there are other legal services that we've paid for in this, I just would like to know.
Specifically those two, I'll ask Mr.
Yes,
Rarick.
thank you.
If you can.
Sure. So, I mean, I don't have the backup information for every one of these vouchers this evening, so the best we could do is if you could possibly provide to the superintendent in writing which ones of these, there's no problem to be able to get that to Carolyn and get it to the.
Thank you.
But I don't have that information here this evening. Typically, we might get a heads up before the meeting if there were going to be a question. I just don't have it.
I apologize.
Specifically Foster Garvey and Pacifica.
Okay.
Yes, I mean, also, if there are charges anywhere else, then I would like to.
Related to any of those?
Related to 1669 specifically, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for the clarity.
Well, actually, I
Thank you,
need to
Mr.
clarify that. So are you asking for, in the vouchers, for any of those that read Foster Garvey or just the Foster Garvey?
Any
what
legal
those,
charges that-
whatever, any legal charges?
Yes, any legal charges that are related to 1669
Okay,
specifically.
okay, got it.
I had a quick question. What's the difference between check amount and invoice amount?
So you'll see like a lot of the, let's take an example. So I just happen to be on the page that starts with First Student Inc., but you can go to anyone, where you see the check amount repeat, right? And then you see the invoice amount. So there's a lot of checks that pay multiple invoices, right? So you'll see, I don't know, pick any one of these, you'll see the check amount repeat, but you see the invoice amounts vary. That typically means that one check is paying for multiple.
One of those?
Yeah.
Okay, so like the first student, that check amount.
Exactly.
And then the invoice adds up to the check amount.
So you'll pull,
Okay.
you'll pull a check, it might be handling multiple invoices.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Eric.
Any additional questions?
I did have a question. I don't know if it falls under this. It was a question on how much our balance is for school lunches currently. There's been a bit of a question as to how much we have sitting there, especially since we've now, most of our schools, I mean, there are, I believe, 4 that aren't covered by free and reduced lunches at this point. And so I was just wondering how much are we, I guess, indebted, or at least people are indebted to the district versus how much do we have sitting in there, and what does that mean, and how does it get resolved?
Got it. So for clarity, not about the vouchers, but more about.
No, I just didn't know where to.
Got it. I think we'll have to come back to you with that one.
Okay.
But I think I know the question you're asking is what debt has been incurred for the lunches, and that kind of is accrued over time. So my team will need time for that. So, but thank you for the question.
Yeah, thank you.
Any additional questions or comments? Seeing none, we are moving to a vote. A motion's been made for approval of 6.15 vouchers and seconded. We are now voting on that. All those in favor of approval of 6.15 vouchers, please raise your right hand and say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those against?
Nay.
Any abstentions? The motion passes 4-1. Listed on the agendas are informational items. Those are also posted online. We are now to communication, final communication from the audience.
I did have some, sorry, I just had some questions on one of the 7 items, if that's okay.
Yep, which item was that?
It was 7.04, 4220P, complaints concerning staff or programs.
Yep.
And so I just had looked over this a little bit, and it looks like it's been changed quite a bit, as far as I can tell. And I didn't see the change in 4220 written in such a way that it made the changes make sense, I guess. So I was just wondering what the thought process was regarding what wording was said during the 4220 or in the changes that were made in 4220 that led to the changes that were made to 4220P, if that makes sense.
Yes, so if I understand that, your question you're asking, what was the thought process and the conversation of the board as they discussed in public the policy that led to this procedure that you see as informational?
Yeah, I was more meaning like the 4220 policy that the board voted on back, I think it was last summer, or in the fall. What in that wording led to the changes, like, because there's obviously paragraphs that are removed, and I was wondering what the board changed in the policy that led to the changes made within the procedure.
Well, what I can share is that I can share with what the previous board did and show you what the red line were so you can see specifically what that was. That would probably better answer that. If you would like to hear from either one of our board members about kind of what led to that. I'm sure maybe one of them might share that.
That'd be great. If
That's
you guys
okay.
A lot of discussion. I think we brought it back and forth to the board. Oh, man. 10 readings? 12 readings?
15, actually.
16?
Yeah, something like that.
I think there's a 9er in there. There was many different discussions back and forth that we wanted to make sure that we got it exactly right. We took a vote, got it to a place where we were comfortable. I do believe that it passed. We moved forward on it, and then through normal course of action, then it goes to the superintendent and his staff to make the policy that adheres to it.
Yeah, not the policy, but the procedure.
Did I say policy? My apologies. Yes, thank you.
So I understand that part. I tried to look at the differences between what was done before, like what our policy stated before the board, how the board had set it up previously, and what it stated after the board changed 4220. And I just didn't see how those changes led to the changes in the procedure. I just don't, that's where the disconnect for me is, at least.
Could you tell me maybe something specific that maybe we could see if we could clarify?
So mostly it was, sorry, I'll have to go back to that. See if I can find it. So the section here where they changed the way that it's written in such a way that if the matter is not resolved, the superintendent will present the issue to the board. That section was removed, and I didn't see in the changes made in 4220 what led to that part of that, like why it was removed from the board at all, and because I don't see that in the policy, but maybe I missed something.
And I'm sorry. Please tell me, I'm trying to look through the document could you repeat that?
Yeah, so in the document.
Could you maybe specify what section you're looking at?
So it's 4220P,
Yep.
and it's down below section C, which I think was maybe added, or maybe they separated it out, I guess. The part below that.
The red-lined
Yes,
section?
yes,
Okay, thank you.
that part.
And I encourage any of my board members that want to jump in here with me too. I'm sorry, we're going back to November for remembering all this one. The matter is still not resolved. The superintendent will present the issue to the board. If the complaint is against a staff member, the board may discuss the complaint. I believe that we streamlined the process based off of both what was happening, who the normal parties were involved.
Yeah, I think if,
Please.
President Margell, Ms. Holly, if you would like to come up and just talk, I think that might be helpful. But I will restate that I think with the policy piece that I think Director Cook is asking, providing him with that, so that would be helpful as well.
I'm sorry,
Ms.
providing
Holly?
what?
The actual policy.
Oh, the policy.
That is correlated to this procedure, so, but I'll have Ms. Holly.
You have a copy of the policy.
Yeah, I have it up right now.
Great.
Good evening, President Margell, members of the board, Superintendent Vela, Ms. Curry. We had 11 readings of that policy. Started November 2nd of 2022. We finally adopted March 22nd, 2023. And the changes were that we made it where the community and parents of students in the community, of our schools, even if they didn't live in the community, had the right to bring complaints forward. But the only complaints that would go to the superintendent would be handled by the board, as the superintendent being their only employee. And this is, the procedure streamlines that down from what was in the previous procedure. Does that help?
Yeah, I'm curious, like, what's the next step then? So, like, say, for whatever reason, the complainant is not doesn't agree with the decision made by the superintendent? It seems like there's nothing further past that, so they can't take it beyond that, or is there still a possibility of them bringing that concern either to the board or to another entity beyond that?
Actually, I believe the way the policy or the procedure is written, it stops with the superintendent or the designee.
Yes, and so I'm just wondering, does that mean there's no further action that they can take? That's just the end?
I believe that's correct.
Okay, and that's the part that I guess I don't fully understand, where the changes that were made, like, because the changes in the policy that led to that change in the procedure, and that's where I don't see what difference there was that the board had made in policy that led to the change that I see in the procedure.
I think there were so many versions that went forward, went back, that the one that was settled upon made it where it was the public, whether it's community or a parent, would come, they'd follow the channels, because usually what happens if you have an issue, you start with the teacher or a staff member, it escalates if it needs to the principal, and it goes from there to them, their supervisor, and then the superintendent or the superintendent's designee. So, and I believe that was all how the procedure or policy was changed, and this procedure matches that.
Okay, because I don't see in the policy anywhere where it states that it wouldn't. It's more of the policy doesn't state that it should include that, and so to me, that seems like it's taking a piece out of the procedure that wasn't directed by the policy, as far as I can tell, but maybe I'm reading it wrong.
I think just the change being the focus for so long was narrowed on the superintendent, when really this policy was about any staff member or program with the direction there of where to go. I think the focus really started in on the superintendent when the policy was for the entire district. And so we made that match.
Well, I guess like my concern is in the policy, it says complaints received by the board or a board member will be referred to the superintendent designee for investigation, except that complaints against the superintendent shall be under the board's oversight. And so if the board brings a concern or a complaint about anything, whether it's a program, a staff member, or what have you, it's never going to come back to the board to discuss. It's just going to go, and then that decision will be made by the superintendent. So we would, to affect that change, if we wanted the board to be able to have a say in what's happening, if it's something egregious, say, and of course I'm not expecting something like that to happen, but if it were, our board no longer has the ability to make any sort of decision on anything going on in the district program or personnel-wise at all. Am I reading that correct?
I believe that's the way it is written, that the superintendent or the superintendent's designee is the final stop.
Okay.
Other than for the superintendent himself or herself.
Okay. And since this is informational, we don't vote on it, right? So it's just going to be part of procedure, and if we want to change that, then we would have to decide to do that within policy ourselves.
Right. And I also add, it's really, the variable is the type of complaint, right? If it has to do with the federal piece, definitely the board's involved. That's a whole different one. The board, if I recall, the other piece is that there are staff to staff were issues that we have contractual language that actually deals with that piece. You heard the superintendent, we needed to streamline the process, but it's really dependent on the type of complaint. That other policy would take hold, but for this specific one, that's what I recall the board doing, is streamlining for the correct area to take over, depending on the complaint.
I see, and I'm just curious, how many of these complaints are we getting a year that had to come to the board? Was that something that happened all the time?
I would say that prior to the board reviewing the policy and making sure that the procedure aligned, there were quite a few because of the things I just said. The right process or right policy wasn't being utilized, and this was being used in a way it wasn't set up to be used. And so we streamlined it, the board discussed it, and then we aligned a procedure for it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Hawley.
Okay. Ms. Antello, are there any additional public comments that were received. I think I got them all.
President Margell, members of the board, Superintendent Vela, Ms. Curry. You are correct, President Margell. No additional comments were received. All have been heard for the evening.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We move on to section 8.02, board reports. Director Song?
Sure. So again, thanks everybody that was able to come out tonight and continue displaying the support and dedication to the school and the school board as we continuously meet and try to make the best decisions as we can. Just based off the feedback, the comments, and a lot of the testimonies we've seen and heard, not just from tonight, but just from weeks past, I think there's a lot of reflection that we need to do as a board. I can only speak for myself, but in terms of what I'm noticing is that, one, we're in this space where we forget the context of the person. I'm feeling like we're getting caught in this idea or this place of stuckness where we're so focused on the symptom of everything that's occurring that we're forgetting to get back to the core or the context as to what's actually meaningful, what's actually contributing to the ailments or to the challenges or griefs that we're facing. And so with that, I think just bringing ourselves back and grounding in the idea that collectively as a board, we do need to improve some of those practices, ensuring that we're being mindful. And I think after hearing, again, just additional testimonies and statements about a lot of the processes, procedures, debates that have been ongoing, this is just something that I personally want to dedicate to the community as something, and also with the board, of having further discussions and making sure that we're regrounding ourselves and finding ourselves in a place where we're, again, speaking from compassion. I think I've heard a lot of these words being used, and oftentimes I find ourselves being caught in misusing a lot of these terms, and I think there's a lot of searching that we should be doing as a board. And so I think that's just my dedication to the community, is after hearing all of this, is how can we come back and regroup, and hopefully moving forward we can present in a more stable manner. So again, thank you all.
Thank you, Director Song. Director Cook?
Yeah, so I just wanted to speak to what I guess I've been up to with the district lately. I did go out to iGrad to just speak with some of the staff there. I felt that, you know, it seemed a lot of the students and staff that came to speak had a lot of concerns. I don't know that I was able to assuage them as much as I would have liked to, but I'm hopeful that, you know, with working together, we can come out with a solution that works well for all of our staff, and that our students are supported in the best way possible. I don't know what that will necessarily look like going forward, but I know that those of us up here are going to do our best to make sure that the students are taken care of, that the programs that we have continue to be supported in the best way we can, given the constraints that we have here in the district. After that, I would like to say I went on a 5th grade camp with Sunrise, and it was fantastic. Springbrook and Kent Elementary were also there, and honestly, it was amazing. The kids, I think, get so much out of it. It's just astounding. Seeing the amount of growth that just the 10 or 12 kids that were in my cabin, seeing how much growth they had in those 3 days in their leadership, in their compassion for each other, in all aspects. The social and emotional learning that is going on during the outdoor camp is just incredible. And the single day part, as far as what I saw, it is still very good. Is it as good as the full 3 days? No, it can't be, right? But I would say it's still very, very good. It's still something that they're going to get a lot of the information that they learned if they did the 3 days. They're still going to get most of that. It's just the overnight part, and getting the bonding that happens a little bit more in being there 3 days. And I was so happy to see how much was done there, and the mentors too. The mentors were fantastic. They did a great job. They were working with the students and leading a lot of the training that was going on. I was really happy about that. I'm going to be going with Grass Lake and Meridian Elementaries next week. I was the board member that they were speaking of, and I did that because I saw a need and it was something I could help with. And so I don't expect everyone else to do it, but if just a few people do. In this case, we were only 2 people away, and so it was just something I felt like I could do, and so I did. I don't expect anyone else to do that, but if anyone knows someone and they hear about it, ask around. If they have availability, if they have the time to do so, and they can take those 3 days coming forward. There are 2 more times that we're going. I believe on the 21st, the week of the 20th is one of them, and I think it's the week after that, but I'm not 100%. So if you have freedom to do that, if you know people that have freedom to do that, we need male chaperones. It seems to be the most difficult one, and I don't know what their need is at this point, but if you do hear that there is a need, please step up. That's all I would say. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Director Cook. Director Clark?
I had the pleasure of visiting Grass Lake Elementary last week, and it's always a delight to see a professional staff at work and making real education take place. I'm very pleased in repeated visits to elementaries to see a pervasive attempt to teach leadership among elementary students, and it's just a delight because it's very clear it's making a difference. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Clark. Vice President Vera?
This is almost to the end of the year, and the awards of Employee of the Year are coming up, and I'm really delighted to be part of that. And today we were able to visit Cedar Valley Elementary to present an award for the KOP Educator of the Year, and I could tell you it was amazing to see the face of that educator, how she was so surprised, and we did a surprise. So I'm really thankful that I was part of it. I want to also thank the presentation we received about budget today, and it was very thorough, and we had a few questions that we got answers to, and we have many more, but it is something that we were looking forward, and the shortcoming of budget is real, and I'm glad that, the years that I've been on this board, we've been talking about stair-step, and here it is, and we will do our best and make sure that Kent School District always has a place for our teachers. So that is one of the things I took away from today's budget meeting. I want to thank, as usual, the KSD staff. You guys are the best. I want to appreciate you. I really want to make sure that you guys know that. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Vice President Farah. I'd like to first give a thank you to Ms. Zantello and Ms. Curry as executive as executive assistant to the board and executive assistant to the superintendent. You really make our lives easier. Make sure that we show up where we need to show up, and that we have all of our calendars in order, and just really make this a pleasure. So being administrative assistant Proclamation Day, I just really want to take a moment to thank you very much for all of the work that you do. It's also very nice, the long nights looking out and having a smile to make sure I'm doing this always in the right process, so thank you. I also want to thank Mr. Rarick and his team for the presentation today. I don't love that we just don't have all the resources to give to everywhere that we want to give, but I appreciate the thoughtful work that goes into it, and answering the questions that I know that we all have as we're trying to digest and take that information. So thank you very much. I know a lot of work goes into that from you and your team. I'd also like to thank Mr. Buzzard and his team for a capital projects update that we had this week. And we're able to have some additional insight into the many projects that we have committed to and completed and have in process, and will complete from the bond and then from levy dollars. I'd like to give a shout out to National Student Leadership Week and our student councils and our Honor Society, and also say I am very much looking forward to seeing us follow our policy and our procedures to having student voice on this board. We have been committed to it. We have talked about it, and I cannot imagine us starting a school year next year without a good, firm process in place. I am very much looking forward to working with administration and seeing how that is put in place so we have a comprehensive voice from our students in a safe manner and a safe place for that. So, outdoor education. I appreciate people taking this so passionately. Again, I can think back several decades ago when I went with Kent School District, and I can think of the teachers that went there with me, and being able to see my teacher in shorts and showing and learning archery from her. She was awesome. And, you know, those are the things you don't normally learn from your teacher. And so I think when we got to know our teachers more by being there, and thank all of the people who attend. I was just talking with my mother-in-law, who is a 30-year retired teacher from Kent School District, and she always said that that was her favorite time of year, was going to that. Even as a kindergarten teacher, she went with the 6th graders every year. So thank you to all of those who attended this year and will be attending hopefully next year to make this a possibility for all of our students. Talking about budgets, I did like to say that, you know, it was not surprising, but good to see today in our projections for next year. When we looked at our student enrollments, one of the numbers I did see consistent was our iGrad numbers, and seeing those in being consistent from year to year. We're in support of this program. This program is staying, and I am looking forward to, I believe it is next week-ish, maybe in the next couple of weeks, that we have an opportunity. I need to have Naomi tell me where I'm supposed to be. In the next couple of weeks, being able to go out to iGrad and see both the existing site and then the new site and what that looks like. So we will be out there shortly and be part of that. I'd also like to thank all of my board members for fully participating in the board retreat that we had. Good information and also a good time to reflect on what it means to be a board member and good boards membership. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that quite right, but bear with me on that one. And just remind you all that we still have homework that I look forward to us discussing in the near future. Thank you to all of those who talked about the levy, gave information about the levy, and directed people to the right information about the levy. I look forward to seeing how that turns out. And the last thing that I would like to say is thank you to our students. Again, we do all of this for you every day. I hope, and hope is not a plan, I will plan and commit to making sure that the more we talk about our students and not adult problems. So thank you very much, and that concludes my board report. It is 7:50. Have a wonderful evening. Thank you for being here. Thank you for joining us online. Our meeting is adjourned.